Hi everyone. Today I'm going to make a very short introduction to the service worker and how you can use it to convert any static website into a progressive web app. I provided you with a link to this repository. You can go ahead and clone it. Then you can run any server you want. I am running Python 3 HTTP server, so you can have it running in localhost. So I'm going to guide you through the process of creating the service worker. Obviously, the first thing you need is to create an SWJS file. That's how I name it. And you also need to create a static cache for this because we're dealing with static assets. So the first thing you want to do is create a variable static cache. You can name it anything you want. This will have the name of our app. In this case, I will name it Hello World. And you also want to create a variable with a list of caches. I know there is only one, but it is good practice to create this variable at first, because in the future, if you want to add more caches, all you have to do is just handle this with this array. So I'm just going to add the static cache I just created, and this will be used for the name of the cache that I'll be creating during the install process of the service worker. So I'm just going to add an event listener that will happen during the install, and pass a function to it with an event. So during this event, I'm instructing the service worker to wait until caches is open, and it's going to open the static cache with this name that we just gave on this variable. After it's open, then pass another function, and we open the cache, and with that cache we return cache add all. We're basically instructing the service worker to add all of the following resources. Now I have 10 files, and you can save them by yourself. We have 5 images, 2 HTML files, 1 CSS file, and 2 JavaScript files. So this is the first step, but there is something important we need to do whenever we create a cache, and that is that we need to take care of all caches. So I'm going to be using some code that Jake introduced to us during the lectures. So we're going to add an event listener for that. Add event listener, activate, and then we're going to deal with the event in the function. Again, we're going to wait until all this is done. And what Jake had us do was open the caches and get all the keys, and from those keys then we get all those cache names. And what we want to do with all these cache names is return a promise for all of them. But before that, we want to make sure we actually filter this, because we don't need all the caches in the browser. This is returning all the caches. We only need the ones for our application. So we provide a filter that will return that cache name if it starts with hello world. Now I'm using this prefix because that's the prefix I'm using in this static cache. And if I decide to add more caches, all I have to do is use the same prefix for all of them. Like if I had one for images, I could call it hello world images. If I had another for avatars, hello world avatars, and so on. So this will basically take care of all the caches for our application. But I also want to make sure that it is not included in the list we provided here. This is the list of the current caches for that version of our app. So we make a negation of all caches includes the current cache name during this iteration. So basically this is going to filter and get us all the caches for our applications that is not part of this array. Once we get those back, we do a map, and what we are going to do is simply delete that. So we do a return, we open the cache, all the caches, and delete the cache name. So this takes care of all caches. Now, the next thing we need to do in our application after cleaning the old caches is we have to tell the service worker to handle offline requests. Again, this is a very simple service worker which deals only with static assets. We already have all of our static assets here. So now we need to tell the service worker to deal with events when the service worker is offline. So what we are going to do is add an event listener, and we are going to ask it to listen to fetch requests. We're going to pass it a function with that event, and then we are again going to ask it to respond with we're going to ask it to respond with, we're going to open the caches because we want to respond with anything that is found in the cache if it is there. So we look for a match for the event request, and then with that response, if we got any at all, we simply just return it. Now, if no match was found, then this is going to be a null or void. So we just simply do a regular fetch for the event request. So what this is doing right now is simply listening to all fetch requests, and it's going to look for a match in the caches, and with that response, if there was any, simply return that, or otherwise just try and fetch it from the network. So far we have done all this, and our service worker is pretty much ready, but there is only one thing we haven't done, and it's registering the service worker. So we created our service worker. All we have left to do is register it. So you can go ahead and create another file and call it register swjs. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, you can add the following in any of the scripts you're calling from the HTML files. But I find it to be a good practice to put it in a separate file, because that way you can call it with only the code you need, instead of relying with huge amounts of JavaScript. But I'll leave it up to you. I mean, if you don't want to create a separate file, that's fine. But I created another file called register.swjs, where I'm going to make the question if Navigator service worker is supported. So if it is supported, then this is going to return true, which means that then we can go ahead and do the registration Navigator service worker and register. Now our service worker is called swjs, so I can go ahead and call swjs, and then return a function And the only thing we're going to do here is just simply do a console log service worker registered successfully. All right. And if there was an error, we simply do a catch. We catch the error. Do a function with providing the error, and we just simply do a console log and failed to register. And we pass the error that we got back from the cache, so we get a hint of the problem that may happen when not being able to register the service worker. So this is going to take care of registering the service worker for us if it is supported. So all we have left to do now is call this a script from our HTML pages. Like I said before, you could have added this. For example, we have a script.js file here. You could have as well just added this down here. But don't save changes. We can also do the same by simply adding another script here. Script with the source. We want it to be equal to register swjs, and we save. Let me copy this to the other HTML page, which is about HTML. You always want to make sure you call your register swjs from any HTML page the user may go first to. So your user won't necessarily arrive at the index all the time, so it is good practice to also include your registration of the service worker on any other HTML page. So, okay, so right now I have my register swjs script, and hopefully I didn't make any mistakes on my code. I can go ahead now and go back to my application, and I will do a refresh, and as you'll notice, the service worker is set to right now be active and running. We have our app cache, and we can go to another page, yes, and let's go and test it out offline and refresh. And as you can see, our application is working offline right now. One last thing I want to add is that whenever you make changes to your application, let's say I want to make a change in index.html. I want to change this h2 header to hello world. I make the save. If I go to my application, this is something the user will actually do. If I click refresh, you'll notice that there was no change at all. So the only way for the service worker to notice the change is if we make a change here in the version. This has to be done anytime you make a change to index.html or any page on your static, even if you change an image or if you add another one, in which case you will add another static asset here. You always have to make a version upgrade to your cache. Now, if you go back and do a refresh, you'll notice that now there are two caches, and this is why we took care of cleaning the cache. So if I navigate away and come back, now you'll see hello world and the new version of the cache. And this is it for this introduction, and if you have any questions, let me know.